Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode, 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. And guys, I have to tell you, before we um, started recording, I asked my author, like, where are you dialing in from? And when our author, Lois Wagner, said South Africa, I almost teared up. I had to contain myself because it's 9 o'clock at night where she is. It's 2 o'clock here in Chicago. But I almost was about to tear up because when I started this journey to interview 52 authors, I didn't have a plan in place. And it is unfolding organically that I'm just so honored to meet you, to introduce my listening viewing audience to your journey. So, welcome to 52 Authors, 52 Weeks.
Hi, thanks very much for having me, Lisa. I'm looking forward to it.
So, tell our listening viewing audience about your background, and then we'll get into the book.
Well, I don't know, I've lived 70 years, so I've got a lot of background. Um, but I've done a lot in my life. I have worked in almost every industry in some capacity or other. I've been around the block. I'm an adventure traveler. And yeah, my life has been interesting, to say the least.
Now, when you said 70, I said that's still young because I'm 50. Well, actually, I'm 51. Let me get my age right. I'm 51. My grandfather is 103. So at the time of this
Ah,
recording, he is currently 103 years old. And
ah.
so one of the things that I realized is that at the age that I'm at the age that you're at, we've seen some things, we've heard some things, we've done some things. And I think at this point in our lives, we have to pour back into others. But before we can pour into others, we have to release what was holding us back from our past. And so your book, I love the background, Walking Without Skin, a journey of healing from fear to forgiveness to freedom is so powerful because there are so many people who are not taking advantage of what life has to offer to them because they have the mask on. They're fully covered with all the skin from head to toe, and they're not taking it all off so that they can move forward. I recently read this book by Dr. William Bridges where he talks about transitions and how, in order to get to the new phase, you first got to close the door. And then once you close the door, you step into this neutral zone. I like to call it the messy middle, right? But then the new beginnings happen. And when the new beginnings happen, you're like that butterfly that's in your background where you're just beautiful and you're just flying around in your new space, your new mindset, and you feel like a totally different person that you didn't even realize was inside until you started to walk around and begin the healing process.
Well, I'm not sure that I totally agree with that because you never completely shut the door. The process is a very convoluted process. You go back and up and down, and it can be very, very, oh,
Oh, we got a visitor. I love it. I love it.
it can be a very convoluted journey. So I don't think you ever shut that door when you transition into a new life. I have transitioned into a new life, but that door is still very much ajar.
I love it. And what I love about meeting all the different authors is that we each bring forward a perspective that gives you some food for thought. Because I think back on some doors that I closed, and maybe in the back of my mind, they're still there just a tad bit. So I agree. It's still a little ajar. I love it. I love it. So tell us about the journey to writing the book, right? Everybody has a story about why they wrote the book. So tell us about your journey.
Well, first of all, the journey of writing the book was many, many, many years. um, it started back basically on the night. It started on the very night that I was brutally attacked and raped and left for dead. And it happened in a time all those years ago when the word rape was never mentioned in polite circles. People didn't talk about it. The Me Too movement hadn't been invented yet. And so it just was something, it didn't happen to me. It didn't happen to people I knew. It was something over there. And so I was so angry, as you can well imagine, that I wanted the world to know about it and I wanted to change the world. So I started that very night. I started writing my thoughts of the experience down, and it's with the intention of publishing. And I wrote it as a diary. So it's a very raw book. It's a blow by blow, my emotions, my feelings, other people's attitudes and reception. And so it was it's quite a fascinating read because of that. It's very authentic, it's very real, it's very raw. But it became a bit of a wada. It became a bit of a diary as the healing started and my life started returning to some form of normality. It just became quite boring. And this diary of mine was now, and so I just put it aside and I left it. And it only got published some 25 years later.
Wow, wow. So the book, and it was a different read for me because I'm used to kind of reading where it's like paragraphs, whereas you had some paragraphs, but it was like a date. And so because I'm reading on the plane a lot, I'm like, okay, this is the date that we're at. And then what starts to happen, you start to describe. And so it for me, it was somewhat emotional, and I'm an emotional being, right? So I'm reading the words, and as you mentioned in the forward to the book, I felt every thought and emotion. I felt them. And although I've never been through your journey, I felt it from the words. And one of the reasons that I think is so important that this story be told is still happening today. And it's still behind closed doors, if you will, and people are being told to just, you know, push it under the door. I remember, and I told you this before we started recording, December of last year, top of this year, I spent about 10, 11 days in Ghana, Africa, and we went to an orphanage where whew, there was a 6-month-old baby who had been raped numerous times. And as a mother of a special needs daughter who can't talk, who can't hear, it made me I got emotional about it because what if that had happened to her and she'll never be able to tell me? But at that orphanage, when I actually saw the baby who had been raped several times at 6 months of age, I'm at 51 and that's never happened to me. What kind of life, what kind of memories is that baby going to have in the future? And it was so hurtful, so hurtful.
There's just no understanding the mentality of people who do that. It's so horrendous. It's beyond words.
It is. It is. And I think I was with a group of about 300 people when I went. And I think we all left. First of all, several folks were like, "Can we adopt a baby?" Right? They were like, "You can't adopt a baby and bring the baby back to the US," right? So that was a no-go. So only thing we could do was, and I didn't even hold the baby. Hold the baby, give donations to the orphanage, but I left just a different person. Really being grateful for my life here in Chicago, right? It's not perfect, but it's the life that I have. And there are some things that others have gone through that I can't even fathom that experience. But I'm enjoying learning about what others have experienced, because as a leader, a mentor, it helps me understand why individuals say what they say or do what they do, because it could be based on something that happened to them that I don't even know about, right? That they haven't disclosed, that they're still holding. And so I applaud you for writing this book, because you are going to help someone. And trust me, there are some others who have this similar journey, this similar journal, that will never see the outside of their own four walls. And so those that are going to read this, they're going to see themselves, because I know the numbers are higher than what is reported from a statistical perspective.
But it's also more, because it took me so long to write the book, I changed the format. And as you read it, you will know it started off very much a diary format. And then it ends up being a bit of a self-help guide. Here are some techniques that I used or that I didn't use that I could have used on my healing journey. And the beauty of it is that those steps can be applied to any kind of trauma, any kind of adversity, any kind of negative change that you've had to experience. So it could be the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one or any bad experience. You can apply the same tools in your journey of healing. And it's just so important that everybody understands that everybody's journey is unique. No two people are going to experience the same thing. And also to know that they're not alone. There are therapists, there are self-help gurus, there are coaches, there are so many different healing modalities that what works for you may not work for me. So don't give up.
I love it.
Keep searching. You will find that healing that is right for you.
Yes. And I like how you mentioned that we are each unique, just like our fingerprint. When we're born, they do the foot, the footprint, they might do the fingerprint. You are a unique individual, and none of us will experience life the same way that somebody else experiences life. But you have to just appreciate your own journey and live it, and know that there's help. You're not alone in whatever the thing is that you're experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, in one of the things that I noticed in the book is that you had, and I'm like, as I was reflecting on my book, I'm like, your next book needs some visuals, because I didn't have any visuals in my book. But tell us the thought behind the visuals in the book. So, for example, there's a visual very early in the book that goes from victim to survivor to thriver, and you title it, and I'm guessing that you love butterflies, because there's lots of little butterflies on this one page, and you talk about soar and fly to freedom. What's that about?
Okay, so that is basically my journey that I've built into the process. So it starts off by saying that you're going through life doing whatever you're doing, and then something happens to disrupt you, that trauma, that negative experience, and you become a victim. And a victim is all of those hatred, fear, disgust, shame, blame, sadness, all of those negative emotions is when you're a victim. And in order to come out of the victim mode, you need to develop your resilience. And resilience is not bouncing back, because you don't bounce back, you crawl back, you fight your way back, and then you become a survivor. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm a survivor of whatever it is. But surviving is to me, it's still a struggle. You're not there yet when you're surviving. So here's when you develop your grit, and your grit is your passion and your perseverance and your purpose, and you're going forward and you're developing a growth mindset. What have I learned from this experience? How has this experience helped me grow and help me develop? And some of it turns into a benefit mindset where you're going to use your experience to help other people. Like I do coaching to help other people overcome their trauma. And that's when you become a thriver. And then the greatest step of all, the greatest step of all is to forgive yourself and to forgive others. And when you reach that point, you will soar and fly to peace and freedom. And so that is the model that I believe so strongly in, that if you follow those steps, and you can see the little ribbon, it's not a straight line, it's up and down and around and around. But that is the journey to take, and you will find that freedom.
I love it. I love it. And I like the visual depiction. And I like how you threw in the benefit mindset, because I think everybody's heard about the growth mindset, but they haven't heard about the benefit mindset. And as you go through that journey and you forgive yourself and you forgive others, you're free to move about the country. You're free to move on with life. Why do you think that many of us get stuck in the survivor phase?
Because we don't know how to go forward. We don't know what that next step is. I think that is more it than anything. And sometimes it's quite nice to be, oh, woe is me. Look, everybody's fussing over me and I feel special and wanted. But we don't know that there is a solution, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why it's so important. And that's when forgiveness starts developing. You've got to forgive yourself. I have to forgive myself for not knowing how to fight. I fought this intruder with everything I had, but I didn't know how to fight. So I had to forgive myself for that. I had to forgive myself afterwards for drinking too much to drown my sorrows. So one needs to forgive yourself. But and that is part of the release that brings you out of that survival mode, because you feel so good once you've been able to forgive. And then to forgive the perpetrator. Everyone says, oh, I can never forgive the perpetrator. And no, you can't. Not when you're in victim phase. There's no way you can forgive, because you're still filled with hatred and disgust or whatever it is. So you can't forgive them. But as you're coming out of the survivor into the thriver phase, you realize that forgiveness is not about the perpetrator. It's about you releasing whatever it is that's holding you back. And people don't know that, and they don't know how to do that. So for me, if you can understand what forgiveness brings, you can get out of the survivor into the thriver mode.
I love it. So something that really caught my eye as I was going through the book were the years. And so you um start around 95, 96, right? Kind of capturing this. And what's interesting about your time frame is around this exact same time frame, I had made a conscious decision that I no longer wanted to be on earth. And it was really a direct result of having a baby that was special needs, couldn't hear, couldn't talk. And I hadn't found my voice yet. And I was struggling so much because here I go from this single young girl to now this single mother who's raising this baby without a guidebook, right? And so my life was actually um, disrupted. And I felt like I had been dealt this bad deck of cards, right? And so I remember being in the emergency room and my stomach was being pumped with charcoal. And I remember riding in the ambulance to the mental hospital and spending those 6 hours there. I made up in my mind in that very moment that I deserved to be here, that I was her mother for a reason, and I had to fight. I had to fight with everything that was inside of me. And in the process, I developed my voice, and now I advocate for her and advocate for others. But I literally had to like put my boxing gloves on and just fight, because I was just like, went through this period of like, why me, right? I see other mothers, their kids are walking around, they're talking, right? Whereas mine, she's there, but you don't even realize she's there, because while she may make some sounds, she's not having a conversation with us. When we call her name, she's not responding. That was very hurtful. But once I moved forward, I started to find there were other mothers that needed me to help them, because their children had a voice, but they couldn't figure out how to navigate life with that child. And using my experience, I was able to help them grow. So forgiving yourself and others really positions you to be the best version you can be to help others. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was in straight victim mode. I was just like, why is this like one out of every such and such has this problem? Well, how did my number get called, right? But I realized I have a higher power, and I realized he decided I could handle it. I just needed to figure that out.
So you went through the process, you developed your resilience, and but it's also important to know that when you're in the victim phase, that you acknowledge those emotions. You know, a lot of people say, oh, get over it, move on, forget it. You can't do that. You need to say, yes, I am angry, and I'm allowed to be angry, and I am sad, and I'm allowed to be sad. So it's important, because if you don't acknowledge those emotions, they come back and they bite you later on. And in my case, it came back 2 years later, because I became an activist. That I was going out changing the world, because this shouldn't happen to people. And I didn't deal with the emotions. And 2 years later, I landed up having a psychosomatic back problem. I had 2 failed back operations, and was told that I would never scuba dive or hike again, which were my 2 loves. And it was only when it was revealed to me that there was nothing wrong with my back, it was all up in my head. Because I hadn't dealt with my emotions, I was putting it behind me and putting it behind me onto my back, until my back just said, I can't hold you up anymore. And my back just said, time out. And that was a very difficult lesson for me to learn. And so the lesson is deal with those emotions, acknowledge them, feel them, understand that they're there for a reason before you start that journey.
Wow. So I mentioned to you that I'm interviewing these 52 authors, and one of my most recent authors talked in her book about having this explosive blow up at work, where she acted in a way that no one expected her to act. She had never lashed out like this before, but she was dealing with something that she didn't resolve. And the end result was the situation at work in front of others. And, one of the things I thought about when I read that in her book was, oh, I've been there before. I've had that situation. But also, how can I help others not have that situation, not carrying so much of this heavy burden, using the tools to get rid of them, to not, well, decrease them, to work through them, right? And so you talk about how the book towards the end, the lesson is this tool, like a toolkit for individuals. I think that as I watch the news every day, it's so many people that can use these tools, because people in general are hurting. And as a result, this is a cliche term, but it's true. Hurt people, right? And so we're seeing it play out across the world. And I'm like, what is it going to take for us to have a little bit more peace in life? Like, let's all be butterflies, right? Let's all soar and be free. I feel like situations I see on TV, they're not happening to me, but I'm watching it unfold. And you know how you said that you didn't have social media back then, you didn't have the fancy TV stuff. Well, now everything that happens, we're seeing it play out real time, which lets me know more than ever, so many people are victims and they need some help.
Definitely. And the help is there. The help is there, and you can overcome.
Absolutely. So I know you may think 70 is an older age, but what do you have planned for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'm going to start writing a new book. Um, and it's the same content matter, if you like, or the same concept. It's going to be on finding your feet after failure. Again, people never acknowledge that they've failed or they've made a mistake or they've done something wrong. And so I want to say we've all made mistakes, little mistakes, big mistakes. And so I'm going to be starting a podcast on it where I'm going to interview people who are prepared to admit their failures and their mistakes, and then build a series of steps on how to overcome or get back on your feet after you've made some horrendous mistake.
Absolutely. I love it. I don't know about you, but writing my first book was very therapeutic for me. My last chapter, which is titled Faith Over Fear, I wrote it in Jamaica. I like to travel, as you can tell. Um, and I didn't handwrite it. I spoke to like a Zoom platform, and I was crying, just crying as I was speaking the words. And once all of that came out of me, I had this glow because I had released, right? I had released what was holding me back. I forgave others, I forgave myself. And it allowed me to, and this was 2 years ago, so it allowed me to be the version of myself that you see standing here in front of you today. But I had to go through that process. But now I was like, oh, you got to write another book. Because I think because I've been through so much, I have a lot of tips and tricks to help others with their journeys that honestly, sometimes people are afraid to say. We're bold enough to put it on paper for others to read it, which is freeing all by itself.
Absolutely. And let's learn from each other. Why do we all have to go through that learning curve on our own? We're here to support each other.
Absolutely. So tell our listening and viewing audience how they can find you, because they probably can't get on a plane and go to South Africa. However, they can find you on the new version of Encyclopedia Britannica, the World Wide Web.
It's quite easy. If they just Google walking without skin, they will find me. It's my web page has got that name, my email has got that address, so you won't miss me, Walking Without Skin.
I love it. And I wonder how many people are ready to embark on that journey, because it's a place where you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable in order
What
to start.
what does the title Walking Without Skin say to you?
Well, so as a healthcare professional, I have had some anatomy and physiology. And so for me, I know anatomically, skin is a layer of protection, right? And so I think we are protecting ourselves from acknowledging the thing that happened to us. And when we take off the skin, we start to unmask and start to just be vulnerable. That's my interpretation. But again, I'm a healthcare professional, so I know the skin is a protective layer.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting. People have different takes on it, and whatever your take on it is the right take. It's about just being vulnerable and exposed, and knowing that there is protection out there,
Oh,
different kind of protection.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, I'm so honored that you answered the call for 52 authors, 52 weeks. Everyone, please purchase your own copy. And I have to read this title again. I know it's on the screen, but it's so powerful to say it. Walking Without Skin, a journey of healing from fear to forgiveness to freedom. And I don't know about everybody else, but I like to be free from those things that I allowed to hold me back. And I've personally learned when you get on the other side of it, where you're in the freedom space, you feel lighter. You feel like the butterfly, and you're beautiful, and you can move about the world effortlessly. And what are you going to hold up? I see you're going to hold something up.
Well, I like to end off by saying I invite everybody to fly free.
I love it. So, now you got to get a jingle, right, to go with this.
I've got a song. It was written for me. It was composed by a chap in America. He music for the soul, and it's called can't think what he's called it, but it's Walking Without Skin. I can always give you the link. And it was inspired by my story. He was inspired by my story to write the song. So I have a song.
Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And do you have any final parting words before we end our episode today that you want to say to our audience?
Just learn to forgive. Practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is a muscle. Every day, practice 3. If you have a gratitude journal, have a forgiveness journal. Every day, 3 things to forgive yourself for. I burnt the toast. I kicked the dog. I
Ate too much.
I forgot to lock the cat away before this call. 3 things to forgive yourself for, and 3 things to forgive someone else for. Your friend who forgot to phone you on your birthday, the dog for eating your slipper, the husband who didn't bring the milk home. So just every day, if you can find 3 little things that doesn't need forgiveness, but it builds that muscle. So when it comes to the big things, it's easy.
I love it. Well, everyone, that's a great place to end. This has been another episode, 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. See you next time.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.